England, New Zealand is a repeat of the World Cup semi-final, and it's going to be spicy. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Okay, so England versus New Zealand. It already was building up to be, a pretty good game and bit of tension there already. And then Joe Marler, opens his mouth and puts not just foot in or even both feet, his whole body in it, with his stupid comedy. If you don't know what he said, maybe living under a rock or something. But basically, he said that the haka should be binned. And that, it wasn't fair that teams couldn't respond to it, and et cetera, but he said it in the usual Joe Marler way with his usual charm. So I'm sure there are people who like that guy. Personally, I don't like kind of mouths like him, but that's his personality. That's the way he is. The guy's, he's close to retirement, so he's never going to change. And as somebody said, I think on X or Twitter or wherever, that they were thinking, oh, he's going to be retired soon. That's going to be great. But then they were thinking, no, because TNT are going to hire him, aren't they? And then he's going to be on there forever and a day as well. So, but yeah, he came out and did that. So it means that this game was already building up as kind of England looking for revenge for that World Cup semi-final defeat. Now, instead, it looks like it's going to be, the All Blacks looking for revenge for Joe Marler's comments. And like Marler's now no longer in the England squad. He left for other reasons. I'm not sure what those are. They didn't say. But yeah, he's not even in the team and he's causing problems. But let's come back to the game itself. So it's England versus New Zealand, as I said. It's at the Allianz Stadium. So Twickenham have named or sold. Twickenham haven't sold it, but the RFU has sold the naming rights to Twickenham, so it's now the Allianz Stadium, and it's on the 2nd of November. Kickoff is 3:10 GMT. So there was a bit of a hullabaloo as well about the fact that it's being called the Allianz Stadium now instead of Twickenham. For me, listen. In Ireland, Lansdowne Road has been called the Viva for how long? And then over in Wales, the Millennium Stadium is the Principality now. It was wherever sponsor it was before that as well. So it's nothing new in rugby. I'm sure it's something new for the English fans, but from my point of view, the stadium is a stadium, and you can still, there's nobody stopping you calling it Twickenham. It's just that officially it's not going to be known as that when it's put in the media or press shots or whatever like that. But people can still call it Lansdowne Road or the Viva. Nobody really cares. Everybody knows what you're talking about, and it's going to be the same, I think, with Twickenham too. But onto the team. So we're going to start with England. Going to do our usual format, which is go down through each of the teams first, then come back and have a closer look at each of them, and then talk about a bit more about the game itself. So we're going to start with the England team, the home team. So fullback is George Furbank, right wing is Manuel Feyi-Waboso, centres Henry Slade and Ollie Lawrence, left wing Tommy Freeman. The halfbacks then Marcus Smith and Ben Spencer. Front row is Ellis Genge, Jamie George and Will Stewart. Jamie George is the captain. Second row, Maro Toji and George Martin. Back row, Chandler Cunningham South, Tom Curry and Ben Earl. On the bench then you got Theo Dan, Finn Baxter, Dan Cole, Nick Isekwe, then Ben Curry, Alex Dombrandt, Harry Randall and George Ford. Okay, then on to the New Zealand team. So front row, starting off, is Tamati Williams, Cody Taylor and Tyrell Lomax. Then second row is Scott Barrett and Tupou Vai. Back row is Wallace Sititi, Sam Kane and Ardi Sabea. Then the halfbacks, you got Cortez, Ratima and Bowden Barrett. Left wing, Caleb Clark. The centres, Jordi Barrett and Rico Ioane. Right wing is Mark Talea, and fullback is Will Jordan. Then on the bench, they're calling it impact. It's the bench, right? Is Asafo Aumua, then Ofa Tuingafasi, Pasilio Tassi, Patrick Tupelotu, Sammy Benny Finau, Cam Roygard, Anton Leonard-Brown, and Damien McKenzie. Okay, so let's have a closer look at the English team. So fullback, Furbank. So again, it felt like when he came in, and Stewart kind of got binned off at fullback. I was like, what are they doing? Like, Stewart was the one consistent, decent player that they had, but I think that decision now has absolutely been justified at this stage. Furbank's definitely the better option back there, just in terms of all-round play and what he actually gives you going forward. Then, right wing, Faye Woboso, been very impressed with him, how he's taken to international rugby and club form as well. So, he's one of those players, give him a sniff for the try line and he's going to get over. Centres then, Henry Slade and Ori Lawrence. There's always big debate in England about what's the best centre combination, and, whether they have a genuine 12 option as well. And because of that, then they keep rotating through, maybe half a dozen players in different combinations there. So for me, this looks like, what could be their centre pairing for a while now. But the problem with England is that things like centre pairing, halfbacks pairing, or the back row especially, are always just, one bad result, not even a bad performance necessarily from them, but one bad result away from, calls for half a dozen or a dozen other players to start instead of the players that are in there already. So, let's see how they go together. But I think, for me at least, in terms of this England team, they've done the development, and now it's a case of making sure that you have those combinations in there, and then bringing in the odd, obviously you have to keep things fresh, bringing in the odd new player, but not basically just ripping up the script every time you have a bad result. So Slade and Lawrence, let's see how they go. I think in terms of on the attacking side, two of them can definitely give you something going forward. Defensively, one of the things you're thinking about is the 10-12 combination in terms of the defense on that side. So we'll talk about that when we get to 10. But then you've got Tommy Freeman there on the left wing as well, another player who's in decent form as well, and another guy who can definitely do it going forward. But for himself and Faye Woboso, they really are going to be tested as well defensively in this one. I'm going to see how they stand up to that as well. Then onto the halfbacks, we got Marcus Smith at 10. So tons of talent. There's no doubt in that. Probably not the best game manager that England have. Like, you look at the likes of Ford. Ford definitely a better game manager than Smith, but we know that the England fans, they want to see the excitement that Marcus Smith can bring in terms of throwing those miracle passes, and the fact that he has a break himself as well just brings more excitement to it. He's definitely the more exciting option at 10, but not necessarily England's best option, but he's the one that people are always going to be calling for until inevitably he does something where he's not the guy that people are calling for anymore, and now there's a new darling instead, right? That normally what happens with England, especially in the media. But there's no doubt in the guy's ability to attack the line, either himself or like putting people through space. So definitely carries a real threat there. On the defensive side, there aren't that many 10s in the world, honestly, that are very good defensively. Obviously, Owen Farrell was good defensively, although in terms of his actual tackling technique, there was a lot of questions about that, how illegal it was, but he was certainly more solid defensively than Marcus Smith. But there are a lot of 10s, as I said, running around in the world that need a bit of help, and Ollie Lawrence is definitely going to have to give him a bit of that, and probably the back row as well. Then you got Ben Spencer beside him as well. So, I think for England, the thing, if you got Smith at 10, you need quick ruck ball. You also need your 9 to be getting the ball away from contact, away from the ruck as quickly as possible, to give him as much time. He'll obviously already done his scanning while he's waiting for the ball, but he needs that time to be able to have all the options that he's seen, and to pick the right one. So, on for Spencer is going to be about, looking after that ball, getting it to Smith as quickly and as cleanly as possible, but also managing the breakdown in terms of, making sure that the All Blacks aren't getting in there and flooding them and slowing the ball down or turning the ball over as well. So a big responsibility, I think, for him on Saturday. Then front row, got Ellis Genge there, at the loose head. I think he's a pretty decent player, and it's just one of these ones. I think Genge is kind of similar to actually in Ireland with Andrew Porter, where how things go in the scrum kind of dictates how well he goes in the rest of the game. So that's going to be I think a big thing for him. Then Jamie George, the captain, he's got to make sure that his darts are straight really in the lineup, because that's the one thing that everybody's going to be watching, I think, with him. And then you got Will Stewart there as well in the front row. So, a fairly experienced front row for England. And, you would expect them as a unit to perform. They don't always perform, but you can say that about almost every front row as well. Second row then is looking a little more settled there. You got Marwa Toji, who's like a fixture in the England team now, and George Martin, who's done so well, being in there beside him. I think that is the combination that probably England should go with. Into the back row, which always chops and changes all the time. Chandler Cunningham South, during the Six Nations had a lot of good play off the bench for England, and he really did kind of put himself out there and showed what he can give. So starting this one against the All Blacks, hopefully he's able to bring that as well. Whether you're up for England or you're for the All Blacks, hopefully you're the type of fan that wants to see two teams playing their best and then the best team winning in the end, rather than one team being terrible and just getting hammered. For me, that's not really interesting to me. So I want England to play well and to do well in this. I'm not an Irish fan who's always like, oh, everything for England, I'm just going to cheer for the opposition. Normally, when it's the November internationals or like the summer tours for the Northern Hemisphere going down to the South, normally I'm basically cheering for the Northern Hemisphere team against the Southern Hemisphere team, because want to support the locals. So probably going to be cheering for England in this one, although it's one where I'm not going to see it live, so I'll probably know the score by the time I watch it, which will take a lot of the kind of the enjoyment and excitement out of it. But what can you do? You got to work, you got to earn your money. So Tom Curry in there as well. Someone who's been kind of in and out of the team in recent times, and the same with Ben Earl. There's always, especially I think with Ben Earl in that number 8 position, it's another one kind of like the centres where there's a whole list of players, and it's always like, oh, Ben Earl couldn't get over the gain line or whatever, and there's these other 10 players playing in the Premiership that should be in ahead of him. It's the usual thing, right? So I think he's one people to be watching to see whether he has a good game or not. Then on the bench, then you got Theo Dan, Finn Baxter, and Dan Cole. So, you got almost a whole spectrum of experience there, right, in that replacement front row. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go as a unit. Then you got Nick Isikwe. I think I always get his name wrong. I always have to listen to it in the commentary, and then I remember for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I look at it written down, and then I think, oh, I'm much better at hearing his name, and then I can say it. But if I see it written down, it's like, I think it's Isikwe though. But he's another guy who I feel like, kind of like Cunningham South. He came in and he had a good impact. Then I think he was injured for a while as well, so he's back in now, and we see how he goes from there. And we've got Ben Curry there as well. Again, lots of options. You got Alex Dombrandt there too. So they're going for a 6-2 split. So they got plenty of options in that back row. But it feels like with England that there's a lot of good players, or even really good players, but and that's the problem, I think, for them, is that you're looking for those players who are a step above that, and sometimes form will put a player up in that level, and then when the form goes away, then they look the same as a whole bunch of other players who are available to them as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how those guys go off the bench, because if it's going to be a tight one, the bench has to have impact, as New Zealand named their bench. Then you got Harry Randall and George Ford there as well. So certainly Ford coming on. He's coming on for Smith's. Sometimes to bring him on, they shift Smith, maybe to full back or something like that, and they have both of them on there. But he might come on for Smith, and maybe that game management coming in and trying to steer England home if they're leading at that stage. So we'll see how that goes. And then Harry Randall, someone who's gonna want to come on and kind of impress as well, because there are there's always, for the last, I don't know, I think basically for Borthwick's entire reign, like, there's always been a question mark about who is the starting 9, and it seems to change. Like the pecking order changes very quickly. So when he gets on, he's got to take his chance, I think. Okay, so let's have a look at the New Zealand team in a bit more depth. So we got Tamati Williams at loosehead. I don't know all that much about him. I don't watch that much in terms of Super Rugby and stuff, but if he's starting for New Zealand, you kind of think he's going to have something about him at least. Cody Taylor, we know a lot about him. He's definitely he's going to give them a lot, I think, in terms of breakdown work and in the loose as well. And same kind of with George as well, is you got to get at least those first few lineouts straight, and then just give your team your platform. Tyrell Lomax, he came on the scene. I thought he was exceptional. I think it was a couple of years ago, right, before the Rugby World Cup, where he came in the Rugby Championship, and the guy looked to the manner born, honestly. And then he got injured. I think it was him that kind of tore his leg or something. I remember him getting injured anyway. And now, like, he's back now, and he's, in terms of tight heads for New Zealand coming through, certainly the best of the crop there. And I'd say he's probably established himself at this stage as the first choice there as well. So interesting to see how they go together as a unit. Then Scott Barrett, kind of, in terms of all of the Barrett brothers, because there's tons of Barrett brothers who played in Super Rugby, but not too much at All Blacks level. Obviously, there's 3 of them in this team, but Scott Barrett, he was one of those kind of almost steady Eddie kind of guys, right? Where he was seen as the backup lock, and now he's the senior guy in there, and he's the captain as well. So, stepping up to at that level, and he's one of those that he's seems to be genuine and down to earth and stuff, and kind of a likable kind of captain, I'd say. Then beside him, we got Tupou Vai. So again, Barrett's going to be the kind of the senior of those two there, and just kind of making sure that as a pairing they go well together. Then the back row, you got Satiti in there, who I think he's going to surprise a fair few people in the north with his play, if he does play up to his potential in this game, and then the other games on tour as well. You got former captain Sam Kane there at 7, and I think not being the captain has been good for him. There was a lot of kind of question marks over him in terms of not just his captaincy, but his place in the team as well when he was captain. And then, so I think now that he just focuses on his own game, it's helping him a lot more. Then we got Artie Savea, just one of those players who, when you're thinking about what his rating is going to be for a game, normally you start at 8 and go from there. Like he very rarely has a bad game, and normally he's in the top few players on the pitch in any company. Then you got Ortima. I don't know too much about him at 9, so interesting to see how he's going to go. Bowden Barrett there at 10. Obviously himself and Mackenzie are kind of swapping in and out there. So, Razor kind of, I think he likes the having the option to start one or the other. And, Bowden Barrett, he's a class player. You know what you're going to get with him. Then Caleb Clark on the left wing. I feel like with him, he's all the talent in the world, but he can be a bit flaky at times, and still questions marks about his defence as well. Then you got Jordy Barrett and Ricky Ioane in there in the centres. The All Blacks for a long time had been looking for a kind of settled centre combination. Anton Leonard-Brown, who's there on the bench, was seen as maybe the solution in there. But I think, with Barrett, Jordy that is, and Ioane in there, they seem to have found the combination that they're looking for. But I think it's similar to the English one that something better comes along, there might be calls to change if the form isn't going too well. But when these two guys are on it, like that, I think they're a class act. Then you got talking about class act on the right wing, Mark Talea, another one of these guys that just knows where the try line is, and expecting good things from him. Then Will Jordan, pretty much every time he plays for the All Blacks, he gets a try. So, if you're a betting person, have a punt on him scoring a try on Saturday. You're probably going to win some money. Then on to the impact, as they call it. So you got Aumua, and then you got Tuinga Fassi and Tosi as the replacement front row. So Tuinga Fassi, for me at least, the most well known of those. So again, going to be interesting to see how they come on, and when if they're going to come on while England still have their first choice front row, or if it's going to be like replacements versus replacements, as soon as they come on. Then you got Patrick Tuipulotu there, covering the second row, and you got Finau as well covering the back row there. So, some players who maybe in the north aren't household names there, but all guys definitely with plenty of talent there, and guys who can really have an impact in terms of just coming on and showing what they can do. Then you got Cam Roigard, who I think is an absolutely fantastic player there, and I thought he probably would have been the starting 9 in this one. And you got Anton Leonard-Brown, who's kind of covering a lot of positions, or maybe, it could be a case of he comes into the centres, and then, Jordy Barrett or Ioane shift out to the wing or something like that. So we'll have to see where he comes on. But another very talented guy. And you got Damien McKenzie. He's a guy that, because of his versatility, almost screams to say, pick me as 23, right? Because he can cover so many different positions for you. But he's done really well when he's got to start at 10. And, he's another one of these guys that doesn't take long to come on and have an impact. He doesn't need to kind of get to the pace of the game for the most part. So two exciting teams here. And, one thing I noticed as well between the two teams. So, starting and on the bench, England have 4 vice captains, and New Zealand have 2 vice captains. So that's a lot of vice captains, between 46 players, to have 6 vice captains is a lot. And for me, I don't understand the thinking behind it. Is it just trying to keep everybody happy, or what is it? Because I know in Leinster last year, they had co-captains, right? They had Ryan and Ringrose, and it really didn't work out well. And for me, I just like to have a simple pecking order, right? This is the captain. This other guy is the vice captain. The rest of you are in the the Brains Trust or the senior players group, or wherever you want to call it, and that should be it. Having 4 vice captains, I think, is just a bit silly. And then it's a case of, well, if George goes off, then who actually becomes the captain? For me, it doesn't make too much sense to have more than 1 vice captain on your team. But in terms of looking at the two teams, I think they're both strong teams. England certainly looking a lot more settled than they were maybe, going into the World Cup. I feel like there were still a lot of question marks. So, but a game like this can kind of make or break a team like this as well, right? If they get the win, then these guys are definitely the way forward. If they lose, and even if it's a close game, there's going to be question marks, as I said, over the centre combination, over the halfbacks, and over the back row, or normally where the question marks come out for England, at least. And then for New Zealand as well, under Razor, they haven't had the best. Kind of had a bit of a wobbly start with him, really, not winning the rugby championship for the first time since, I think, 2019, when, South Africa won it this year, and they won it back in 2019 as well. And that's something, new coach coming in. He was the guy that everybody wanted to come in as well. So everybody was really excited about him, given his exploits in, Super Rugby, and just his general enthusiasm as well, and the way he his approach to the game as well. People were feeling, so I think with that, given that, he's going to get a lot more kind of time in terms of honeymoon period than maybe he would have done otherwise. So, and because that, he can maybe afford a loss or 2 on this tour, whereas another coach, I think every loss would be used to kind of batter him over the head. But Razor is just so likable, and like Scott Robertson, I feel like he's the kind of guy that he can roll with the punches, as it were. He can take a couple of defeats, and then he knows what the end goal is in terms of, he wants to get his players to a point where they play in a certain style, the way that he likes, and he's discovered what his kind of ideal starting 15, 23 wider squad, etc. is, and I don't think he's there yet. But everybody's kind of invested in that journey as well. From the players, the fans and the media as well in New Zealand. So that's kind of good to see from them. But again, it's you look kind of at the spine of the team that they have there, and you think, there's plenty of plenty kind of familiar names in there, but he's also a sprinkling of maybe some newer guys in there and some guys that aren't well known in the north as well. But generally, with New Zealand, a guy that's not known, in the north, that only lasts until November comes around, right? And then suddenly everybody knows who the person is because they have player of the match performance or something like that. So you can definitely see that happening in this one. But how do you think the game is going to go? I think it is going to be another tight one. I think given that England are at home, that certainly gives them the advantage. One thing I would say in terms of the matchup of the teams is that we talked about the halfbacks. Marcus Smith, I think he's going to be a plus, a positive and a negative really for England. I can see him throwing an intercept try, in this game, but I can also see him throwing a try or a pass that sets up a crazy score for England as well. So I think it's going to be positive, negative for him. I think Bowden Barrett is going to be mostly positive, I think, for the All Blacks. And kind of just looking at the two teams, it does feel like it's going to be close because there's a lot of talent that's come into that England team. As I said, they're a lot more settled than they were before, and New Zealand are at the start of a bit of a journey, and it's honestly a very, very close one to pick. Like my head is saying New Zealand are going to win it, and then my heart is saying I think England can actually do it. They can actually get the win. But on this one, I'm going to go with the head, but I'm still going to be cheering for England this one. I'm going to go for an All Blacks win, but I'm going to be very happy if it's an England win. Okay, so that's the end of that one. I'm going to do a preview now for Scotland-Fiji, so that should be up tonight as well. And you guys let me know how you think the game is going to go. I'm going to do reviews of both games as well on this weekend. Probably Scotland on Saturday, and then England, because I probably won't get to see the game, in full until Sunday. It was probably going to be on Sunday for that. Anyway, as I said, post your comments down below. Talk to you guys in the next one.